Yeah, so we are live now. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, or good night, depending on where you're joining us from. Uh, today's session, I'm in one time zone. The speaker is in a different time zone, so it's one of those things when you have an international audience or an international discussion. So I just want to welcome everyone who may be viewing on our various platforms. Welcome from Facebook, welcome from LinkedIn, welcome from YouTube. And today we're going to be having a very rich discussion with Murungi, who's in the studio with us, and we might be having one more speaker joining us as well. Today's focus is going to be on studying in Japan, and it's a very interesting topic because I think not many people have knowledge about things in Japan, especially if you're a native English speaker. Studying in Japan seems very scary. Language barrier, the culture, the adjustments, and all those things. So it's good to have someone in the studio to talk us through most of these things. And I hope we'll have a very good discussion. So, as usual, if you are joining us, please drop your name and where you're joining us from in the comment section so that we can have a good glimpse of the audience and understand the different peculiarities. Obviously, as the discussion rages on, you can drop your questions in the chat and we can take them up as they come in. So, let me introduce myself. I am Buchi. I currently live in the United Kingdom, in Manchester. I work as a transport planner. I was a Commonwealth Scholar in 2022 at the University of Leeds. I studied transport planning and engineering, and I'm now working as a transport planner in a consultancy here in Manchester. So, yeah, that's about me. I'm one of the hosts for this our usual sessions we have every weekend. I've been on a little break for the past few weeks, but I'm back now, so it's good to be back. Murungi, do you want to tell us a little bit about yourself?
All right, so my name is Murungi Elizabeth Mwebesaba, but you can call me Murungi. I am from Uganda, that's East Africa, and I came to Japan April 2020, April 2016. So I came to pursue my master's. That was the plan. Then eventually I decided to do my PhD as well, and I graduated in March 2022. So just like you said, really, Japan is, for lack of a better word, alien for many of Africans. Probably what we know about is a Toyota, Hyundai, I don't know what, and all those other basically cars and appliances. So me going to Japan really was, well, I would like to say my younger self is was more adventurous, always taking the path less used or less taken. So after university, I did my undergraduate in Chambogo University in Kampala, Uganda. And after that, of course, there's always been an itch to go abroad to study. I always felt like there's something more out there in the world than just what I know in this Uganda of mine or East Africa. So I always wanted to go abroad to pursue graduate studies. But I started off working. I worked for about 4 to 5 years before I got the scholarship. And during that time, I have very many friends who went abroad to study. I had many of them were going, of course, to the West, the US, UK, and of course Europe. So they would come back and then we would chat and do all these things. I did try other scholarships, but it is during those chats that I would have with my friends that I realized I want something different. I want something different from school in UK, school in America. I just wanted something different. So as fate would have it, eventually, I call one random day. I call up a friend of mine, my very good friend Rusty. I said, "So what's up? We've been hunting these scholarships for a while. Eh? What's happening? What's new? Have you heard about anything?" So it's like tomorrow the Japanese scholarship is closing. I'm like, really? It's closing? Said yes, it's closing. So I told her, okay. let me try my luck. So I applied for the scholarship a day. I got the documents for the scholarship a day before. I applied on the deadline. Well, to cut the long story short, I was lucky enough to be part of the three people that were chosen to come for the MEXT scholarship in that year. So I know many scholarships have very many requirements, and the Japanese MEXT scholarship is not any different because there's different scholarships in Japan. But today we'll be focusing on the MEXT scholarship. This one is by the Ministry of Education of Japan, so it's always through the embassy. So they always have they put out an advert in newspapers of whichever country where they have an embassy, and you just have to look up the time for adverts is usually between, I think, March and April. I asked a few friends. I think the deadline for this year's mixed scholarship is somewhere in May. But there's two kinds of mixed scholarships. There's one through your embassy, through the Japanese embassy in your country, and then there's one whereby uh, a lab seconds you, or you apply directly to a lab, and then the lab takes you up. So that way, the lab takes you up, like a professor has, like, puts out an advert because he has mixed funding, and then you apply directly to the professor. And if you and the professor, you gel and you understand each other, then the professor will take you up, and then you will receive the scholarship. Yeah. So I think with every country, there might be documents might be more or less the same, but of course, there's a whole host of things you need to collect, and some of them include things like a letter from you need like about two reference letters. You need a letter from your former head of department or your faculty. You need a medical examination. You need a copy of your thesis or your project that you did at undergrad or at masters, depending on the level you're going to. So it's a whole host of documentation. And the truth is, it always takes almost a month for people to just get all the documents together. I had to pull it off in one night, but that's a story for another day, really. So, as I said, there's just two types, but all of them are definitely uh, through the professors and or through the embassy. So, perhaps the other difference people would like to know about, other scholarships. Usually, for other scholarships, you apply, then you get the scholarship, then you have to apply to the university, right? Is that how you did it, Anike?
Uh, no, not exactly,
Mm-hmm.
because the Commonwealth has different types of scholarships as well. So
Mm-hmm.
in in some cases, if like in the Commonwealth Masters, to you apply to the commission for the scholarship, you apply for admission to the university, and then you apply to the nominating agency in your country.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
But for the one I did, the Commonwealth shared, you just need to apply straight to the scholarship commission and then get
Mm-hmm.
admission with the university, and then they do every other thing in the background. So, but all these processes are usually similar. There's always something similar, but every different scholarship has a little bit of difference.
Okay.
Just before we continue talking, I I realized that we didn't apologize for starting late at the start of the session. So I just want to apologize to the audience or anyone who was waiting for us at the exact time. We were having technical difficulties in the background, which is what delayed us from starting because we didn't want to start when everything was still scrambled. So apologies for that. And yeah, so Murugi has already started going straight into the discussion, and it's a novel topic. I wanted to apply for the MEX scholarship, but I didn't complete the application. Can't remember why now, but I know I did a lot of applications. MEX was on my list, but I think I started, but I didn't finish. I think one of the requirements either disqualified me or discouraged me or something. I can't really remember right now, but I know it was one of the top scholarships that I was aiming for because I've met a few people that have studied in Japan, and I've heard good stories about Japan. You know, the culture, the civility, the richness in the society. It's one of the places that I would want to visit at some point because I've heard good stories. You know, and you know the Japanese. There's a way they portray themselves, even in their movies,
Hmm.
in sports. And I guess you've had a good feel for that. You've been there for almost more than five, almost 10 years. You said 2016. That's a long time.
Eight
Yeah, but
years.
yeah,
my
yeah.
my
It's,
original plan was 2 years.
the way things change. Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
I'm guessing you've immersed yourself in the culture. So maybe we'll come back to how the studying experience and adapting was. Maybe let's still talk about the MEXT scholarship. So you said that the application window is usually between March and April, but
Yes.
for this year the deadline is around May. So
So, mm,
yeah, does that mean the application is currently open from your knowledge?
I did a small search in the different African countries, Uganda, Malawi, Kenya, just a few countries, random search, and it's still open. The deadline is sometime in maybe mid to late May. So
Okay.
yeah, those people can still try it out and give it a shot.
Yeah. So uh what I'm getting is you applied through the Japanese embassy in your country.
Embassy. Yes,
So it
yes,
should be somewhat on a country by country basis.
yes.
So
However, Japan is a very streamlined country, so even if it's country by country basis, the processes
to be like a standard
are
format across the board.
yes, and also the deadlines are such that whatever is happening in the background on the Japanese side will eventually all align. So sometimes when you apply and okay, just to go back a bit, the reason why I'd asked you how your scholarship was is because the difference between the scholarships in Japan is that when they put out the adverts and you do the interviews and they say, okay, you've gotten the scholarship. So in your case, you said that you sometimes apply to the nominating body, then you also apply to, I don't know, the university. So in Japan, it's the professor of a lab that admits you. Okay. So once you get the scholarship, they'll tell you to find a professor. So when you find the professor and maybe have a discussion, if you guys, are on the same page, you understand each other, then the professor will give you an official letter admitting you into the university. So you don't apply anywhere else to the university. Once the
So this
professor
is
says, okay,
yeah, this is for both masters and PhD.
yes. For
Okay.
undergrad, I'm not so familiar with the undergrad system, but
Yeah.
for
Yeah.
postgraduate,
Yeah. The undergrad system is usually different, but yeah, but for masters
yes.
and PhD is the same. And I think we're focusing on the postgraduate today.
Hmm. So that is one difference that I would like the audience to know and understand that the professor admits you into the university. And of course, they'll ask you for some more documentation and this thing. So it's professor, it's different for every professor. But generally, once you show them that you have funding from MEXT, the conversation is usually easier.
I would imagine. Yeah. Okay. Okay. So is does the MEX scholarship uh because it's the Ministry of Education in Japan on a country by country basis, is it like limited number of slots per country, or is it like a cumulative across? Do you have any idea about that, or does that factor in?
um, when you ask around, is when I just come, what I was told is that Japan is a country that's all about equality. Yeah, it's all about equality. So I was told that they look at like the population and they do something like per 10,000 to try and ensure
Ah,
that they are taking as many people from one country. So if you look at, for example, Nigeria has a bigger population than Uganda. So the chances are there's a possibility they may take more Nigerians than Ugandans. you know.
Okay, okay,
But
okay.
over the years, I think there've been some changes. So a lot might have changed, really. But in my year, when we came, there was three of us. But the year before us, there was only two. So along the way, there's a way they do their thing and change. Really, it's not very definite. And of course, when you come to Japan, there'll be more Asians. You'll find probably more Indians. If there's like two Ugandans, you'll find there's like, I don't know, 15 Indians and I don't know how many Thais and Filipinos. But also because they, they are in a region. So there's that regional cooperation that they're working on, that they will bring in more people from the Asian community as compared to
Ah,
Africa, kind of.
okay.
There's terms and conditions, memorandum of understanding. But when it comes to Africa, I think it really depends on the country. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. That makes sense. And obviously, the one of the highlights of studying abroad is to have a mix in the international community. So I would expect that, you have classmates from across the board that you're working with or that you're interacting with, and you make those connections as well, which is also a
Mhm.
good thing. Uh, just before we continue, I think we have Dr. Tuksu just joined us in the background, hoping we'll get to see. Oh, yeah, there she is.
Yeah.
There she is.
Sorry
Well,
to disturb.
no, 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 no. You're always welcome. Uh, Thanks for joining us. I think you were on one of our sessions last week. If I can remember, yeah, I was on holiday back then. Sorry, so I wasn't there.
Yes. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
it was nice to have you. It's nice to have you. We were just talking about the MEXT scholarship in Japan, and I know that you also study in Japan. Did you also study through the MEXT scholarship?
Yes, yes. I studied
Ah,
with my scholarship, but for my graduate school. So
ah,
master's and PhD, not my bachelor.
oh, okay, okay,
Yeah.
okay, okay. That's good. That's good. Yeah. So we were just going through, some of the details about how the process goes, how the application goes. Mongi was giving us her experience about how she managed to pull it off in 24 hours, which is very brave because she got the information very close to the deadline.
Yeah.
So,
So, may I call Elizabeth or
Morunge plays.
Moringe? Okay, Moringe. Was you also was it for your bachelor or?
No, just my master's and PhD.
Okay, same. Okay. Okay. And are you in Japan at the moment or?
Yes, I am.
Oh, okay. Okay. So we were both connecting from Tokyo, yeah?
Currently, I'm in Nara.
Not okay. Okay. Yeah.
yeah, so at least you guys have met each other now. Maybe one day you guys can plan to meet up in Japan. It's one of those nice things. Yeah.
Definitely.
Okay,
Mm-mm.
so I think someone in the audience asked about discussion on undergraduate, and we've provided a link to a session that was talked about the undergraduate last week. So for anyone that wants information about the MEXT undergraduate process, it was part of the discussion last week, so you can go and watch the recording while we talk about the postgraduate area of things today. But if you have any questions as the discussion goes on, feel free to drop them in the chat and we will pick them up as we go. So the next thing I want to ask Morongi still, uh what is the timeline like from the application process down to receiving the award for the scholarship? Like I know for Commonwealth scholarship, when we applied, you apply around November, wait for a response around April, get your references in order, finalize everything by June, start making the plans for your visa to travel by September. So it's like the Commonwealth takes almost a
Almost
full
a
year.
year.
Yeah, it's a very long process, lots of waiting, lots of waiting.
Mm.
So, you know, I remember then I learned how to check emails regularly. You wake up in the morning, you refresh your email. Is there something there? Yeah,
And
so
check the spam folder.
I always check the spam folder. Always check the spam folder. I know someone who almost missed the scholarship because the reply went to spam, and she was thinking they haven't replied, and then found it like two
Mm.
days before the deadline to respond. So those kind of things happen. So always check the spam
Mm.
folder. It's a very good thing to know. So what was it like for MEXT? Was it a short timeline or was it long?
First of all, I think the very beginning stages, once the deadline comes for application, they usually tell you maybe we'll get back to you within 3 weeks or something like that. The embassy always tells you when you can just ask them and they'll tell you maybe we'll get back to you within 3 weeks. Then they'll get back to you and then you'll have to do an English exam. That is if
Okay.
you've passed the initial screening, then you'll do the English exam. Well, in my case, I remember that English exam. Well, I didn't even at that time. I was very, very busy. I was so busy. I was a project manager on a very huge project at that time. That is where I found out about the scholarship late, and I spent all night trying to apply, getting all these different documents. So after that, they'll tell you there's an English exam, and within that period they've told you, they will definitely get back to you. And then after that, because the English exam, after that they take about, first in our case, because they were thinking of taking 2 to 3 people for that intake, so they reduced it to about I think we were six. So out of, I don't know how many people had applied at that time, they reduced it to about six. So after passing that English exam, then you go for the oral interviews. So those oral interviews also, the time frame is more or less the same. But I think this will depend from country because, as I said, they take a different number of people. So if it's a country where they're taking 15 people, if it's a country where they're taking 10, if it's a country they're taking two, I guess the process, the time
Yeah,
difference.
will be adapted for the number. Yeah.
Yes, 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 yes. So, but all I know is that let me see. We applied. At that time we applied in June. Yeah.
Yeah.
So by like September, by August, they had already decided who has gotten the scholarship. We did the English exam, then we went for the oral interviews, and then they finally decided on the people who are going to go. And then from then they told us to start looking for professors. And the reason why I remember it was by August that whole process had ended is because after they tell you you've gotten the scholarship, you have to look for professors. So I started looking for professors, and there's a period where schools have closed, so the professors are really not in office. They're doing their own things, and there's also
All
summer
right.
vacation and all these things. So I was sending out emails, and they're not getting back to me. And I'm like, but why are they not getting back to me? So it's because of some of these things that you may not really understand or you may not really know because you've not been to the country and all. So I asked a friend of mine who was here. He had done his undergraduate here, and that time he was doing his master's. And I told him, hey, people are not getting back to me. What do I do? He's like, right now it's a tricky period. Professors are probably not in school. They're not in their offices in school, so they will not get back to you as fast as that. But anyway, they give you a time period within which you're supposed to have found a professor or professors. And after you get the confirmation from the professors, you submit those documents to the embassy, and then they start working on your visa and all these other documentation. And you get what I would say the final stuff in February the following year, and then by April 1st you have to be in Japan.
Okay.
So let's say that is, in my case, okay, the people who are doing this intake maybe May. So between May and February next year, things
So
will have,
almost a year too.
yes. However, I'd also like to note that depending on the professor, you could ask they might tell you, okay, you need to come through the April intake,
Oh,
you
okay.
know, or you could come in September the following year. It really depends because also um, that option. However, the other thing about Japan is that most of us have done entry exams. So as much as you've gotten the scholarship and you go to Japan, you have to do entry exams to be accepted into the university. Even if your professor has said, okay, you come, you can be in my lab, you have to do entry exams. So those
Um,
entry exams are usually,
yeah, just before you continue, because you said you did an English test
yes,
for the scholarship. So is that English test done by the Ministry of Education in Japan, or is it the normal
by the
internationally
embassy,
recognized,
by the
or
embassy.
by the embassy? Okay,
Yes, they.
okay.
I don't know what
On
standard they use, but they
online,
have an
in
exam.
person.
At that time, I think, well, that was 2015. We were really doing paper.
Oh,
It was paper, but I believe now they might have upgraded to online. You go probably
okay,
to a place with computers and you do
oh,
it
okay,
online.
okay,
Yeah,
okay, 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 okay. That's one to
yeah.
look out for.
So,
So for those
mm,
listening, just take this into account. So you do that, you get a professor, you and the professor talk, you agree. He says, "Okay, I want to have you," sends you a letter of acceptance. You send that to the ministry. They process your documents. They give you a visa.
you send it to the embassy of
Embassy, sorry,
Japan in your
yeah,
country.
the embassy. Then you get a visa. The entry exam, is it when you get to Japan or before you come to Japan?
Yes. So when you come to Japan, of course, you have an orientation and then you'll talk to your professor. Your professor might even hand you over to someone, the ones they call senpais, a senior student, to help you with the other school processes. There's a lot. Japan is a country of paperwork, yeah? So there's always paperwork at any corner, at any period in your life, there's paperwork. And most of the things are in Japanese. So the professor will give you one of your lab mates to help you with that. So it's during that time that you might also have a discussion. In my case, my professor said, as much as you're here, you have to do an entry exam. I said, okay, when is the entry exam? I came to Japan in April. The entry exam was, I think, in July. It was in
Ah,
July. And here's the catch. The entry exam was supposed to be in Japanese, but my professor pulled a few strings and they decided to have mine in English. But I still had to prepare for the exam nonetheless. And so those who apply most cases, they will tell you it's better you come for the April intake because most entry exams are in the summer. Yeah,
okay,
most entry exams are in the summer, so you need that period to prepare. If you come in September, that means you'll have to wait another year to do the
to
entry
do the
exam.
exam.
However, depending on the department and the university, they might also have winter entry exams.
Okay,
I have a few colleagues whose departments had only winter, then other colleagues who had both summer and winter entry exams. My department has only summer entry exams. So my professor said, I know you have to come in April. Well, he didn't tell me to come and prepare for the exam, but he just told me you have to come in April.
and then when you
Yeah.
came, he now told you about the exam.
And then he shocked me. So I was like, what? Now I have to study for exams? I thought I was just sliding into the system. Well, that wasn't the case.
Yeah,
Yeah.
well, there's always one or two things to do, I guess.
Or
Um,
perhaps the other thing is, well, some people might find it a bit weird, but as I said, there's that English exam that is given by the embassy. But in my case, in my department, we're also asked to do another English exam, you know, and they were accepting either IELTS, TOEFL. Then Japan has its own specific one called TOEIC. So they said any of those exams would be okay. But I argued, I was like, well, not argued, but I was like, hey guys, I've done my entire undergrad and studied all my life in English. Why do I need to take an English exam? So I told my professor, this doesn't quite make sense to me. So my professor was really supportive. So he talked to the other professors and they said, okay, maybe if you bring a letter from your undergrad, you know, university to show that you did your entire undergrad in English, then maybe you don't need to take the exam. But the decision between me talking to my professor and them getting back to me on whether I should I can go without taking the English exam was taking really long. Yeah. So the assistant professor at that time said, you know what, just do the English exam so that if the result comes back and they say the letter from your undergrad is not enough, then you're covered, because there's also a window to the English exam is part of the requirements to do the entry exam.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so those of you who are listening out there, perhaps if you can, you could just do a simple English exam and just have results. Most of them expire after 2 years. By then, surely you'll have already, uh, gotten into the system, and yeah, so it's always good to just have some English exam somewhere. Yeah.
Okay. Okay. That's interesting. That's interesting. So, lots of steps in the process. Yeah. So, okay. So, I think that's good to know. At least everyone has a feel of exactly what it is. I had one more question. No, maybe not the last. Maybe another question will pop up while we're discussing. But I know that when you're applying for these kind of things, it it's when you're because when you're applying for a postgrad, it's more specialist in what you want to do. Sometimes you have to do like a research proposal and things like that. So my question would be, because you're applying for the scholarship before you're getting a professor and the university that you're actually going to and the lab that you may be doing your research in, you submit a
Mm.
research proposal during the scholarship application? And if you submit a
Yes,
research
you do.
proposal during the application, what happens when you have to find a professor and you can't find a professor that aligns closely with what you have in your proposal? Is there room to adjust the research you want to do, or is it set in stone that once they give you the scholarship on this proposal, that's what you have to do? Because I think that's a concern that many people do have about these things.
Mm.
So what is the actual flexibility around that? Because obviously you have to get the professor later and there's a time frame for that. So do you have flexibility in changing the scope of the research that you've proposed while you got the scholarship?
So yes to both your questions. The first one is you have to write a research proposal as part of your application to get the scholarship. Yeah. Then after you get the scholarship, sometimes the processes between you getting the scholarship and talking to your professor, the embassy can say, I think you need to do a little bit more on your proposal or something like that. So you find someone to help you with the proposal, and then because you have to submit something good to a professor, right? Perhaps the other tip is, for example, I'm into transportation. Yeah. So if you're into transportation, what you do is you look at universities that you want to attend, you look at the labs that are there, then you look at the professor that you want, to take you up, and you look at the things that they are generally doing. If the things or the research they're generally doing is okay with you, you like it, then you can redo your proposal. You can redo your proposal to align with what that lab or that professor does. And when the professor accepts you finally, and then you come to Japan and all, please note that that too can also change, along the way, after you do your entry exam and blah, blah, blah. The professor can come up with something totally different for you to engage in. So it's about you being flexible, being flexible. But at the end of the day, I would encourage you to join a lab whose general theme you are comfortable with. Don't don't be so desperate to join a place and then you get there and you're frustrated. Yeah. So if they generally do something you like, something you feel you can do, then apply there, and then just be open-minded to whatever changes that may come along, because you know that you might even write a proposal. Uh, uh, you write a proposal, you then start picking data, then along the way you have to change, right? That's the funny thing about research. So you just need to be flexible. You just need to be flexible and know that anytime things will change. Nothing is written in stone, really. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, so there is that flexibility in the system.
Hmm.
I mean, I think that's something that's constant across research. There's always some dynamics that change things. Make you know maybe when topics change and the world moves towards different
Yes.
objectives and goals. In the middle of your research, you might just need to adjust, switch, adapt. I mean, I think those things are general because I've also seen a lot of that. I mean, it's the same for the Commonwealth Scholarship. You can
Hmm.
write a lot of things you want to do, but when you finally get on the ground, you might find yourself doing so. I mean, I did something different from what I proposed initially, so it's one of those things. Yeah. Uh.
Perhaps another thing that I was actually discussing this with another Ugandan friend of mine that I met today is the awesome thing about MEXT is that, for example, you get into a lab with Professor X, maybe you finally have a face-to-face conversation and blah blah blah, and perhaps you don't gel. When you are writing emails, when you are having the online discussion, everything seemed okay, but then on ground you realize either either the professor is not a fit for you or you're not a fit for the professor, something like that. The cool thing about MEXT is you can change a lab, within the
Ah.
university setting. You can change a lab and say, okay, maybe you just talk to the international student office, then there'll be some processes and all, then you can change a lab to another place that you feel you're more comfortable. That's the
But,
beauty. The
but within
second
the
beauty
within
is
the
that
same university.
you can even change universities.
Ah.
We've had people
Okay.
who have changed universities, but still on the next scholarship. So those are the two most amazing things with having a mixed scholarship, really. You can change your lab, you can also change your university. Yeah.
Okay. Okay. That's good. That's good to know. Okay. So before no, we have Dr. Tuksu for a short while, so I would want to get her own perspective.
Hmm.
This one with regards now, actually doing the studies. We've talked about the application process, how to get in, how to. I guess everything that Murungi said is similar to you, or if there's any difference, you can let us know. But my real question now would be on the actual study experience. How is studying in Japan? How is studying in English in Japan? Because I know a lot of people in the audience, everyone thinks that the language is always a problem. There's always a language barrier and things like that. So, can you just give us a feel of how studying in Japan is? Studying in English in Japan, is the language a problem, or how do you actually navigate that situation?
Yes. Okay. Thank you. Thank you for the question. And sorry that I'll be joining the session very short. But if you have any specific questions, you can contact me later, right?
Yeah, yeah,
And
yeah, yeah. No problem.
yeah. And I hope everyone has the bio, right? The introduction of me. I graduated Yokohama National University in 2023 last year in September, and now I'm currently working as an urban consultant at World Bank in Tokyo. Um, so it looks like the MEXT program that I came here sounds very different from Morongi, because MEXT usually has this two way to come in terms of graduate students. Uh, it's one is embassy recommended, so you directly apply to the MEXT scholarship and then you find the university later on, which is the case for Murungi. But for my case, it was university recommended. So that means usually like prestigious or national high schools or top universities has this program where once you get accepted to their graduate program, the university will recommend you to the embassy. So basically, to Japanese government, Ministry of Education Ministry of Education, right, MEXT, to get you a scholarship, basically. So it's such a actually a good system, because if you really have a specific program that you think it will suit your interest and then background, you will just apply. Of course, it's finding that program might take you quite some time and do some desk research, right? But usually this school would have this like special English program, so you just right away apply to the university. But when you apply to your university, they will ask you if you want to have a scholarship. So of course you'll click yes, and then the second round you will be also sending application to the MEXT as well at the same time, sending the application to the university. So it's kind of same in a package, but it's a little separated. Of course, a bit of the essays or the structure are a little different, but it's just the same thing. And then you would hear your first university result first. So your university is accepted, but it will take you another 2 or 3 months for the government to accept you. So that's how I came. Mine was full program, fully funded. So it's similar to the other MEXT, but it's just different where you have to find your university, and professor and all that stuff. So you talked about the second, I think, question is about the English, right? How
Yeah, the
was
study experience, how.
yeah. I would say two things, because to me it was easy because I studied Japanese when I was back in my country. So I was already not super fluent, but I'm still able to have like a normal conversation with my professor, not very academic conversation, but really like daily conversation with my lab mates and all that stuff. So I was, in that sense, I was involved in Japanese activities with the Japanese students, or if there is any opportunity that Japanese student might have, then I was able to participate and go with them. So that was already easy. But in terms of English, I would say I think there's sometimes, like if let's say you have like 10 professors during your graduate school, and maybe like one or two of them will be really difficult to understand because of the way they speak or so. So there would be still a little bit of barrier, but I don't found it like a big issue actually. So yeah, the fact that I had a Japanese skill helped me, and so I wouldn't say there wasn't any barrier, honestly. Of course, it got like my bachelor was in Mongolian, so my English in terms of like academic level wasn't that fluent. So when I come back, I myself had a bit of barrier where I had to read the paper like 2 times and like what's happening, right? So yeah, that would be my answer. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Uh, Murungi, so
Yes, please.
yeah, so she had a little bit of Japanese, a little bit of
Mm-hmm.
English, so she integrated
Mm-hmm.
with the culture. What's your experience like? Do you have any Japanese background?
How much time do we have? Anyway, so uh, the other thing about mixed scholarships is that most times you have a period where you can attend Japanese classes. So in my
Oh,
case, I came in 2016. So we all joined the intensive Japanese language class, for like those 3 months before summer. So we found ways to go around, asking simple questions and being able to interact with your lab mates and all. And then in my case, once again, I usually look for facts that have not been, taken by very many. So I had a conversation with my professor. So for me, I I did postgraduate study because I wanted to learn. I love to learn. So I sat down with my professor, and then he said, okay, so we have two programs in this department. There's an English program. You're free to take that. There's also the Japanese program. You're also free to take that. So it's entirely up to you. What do you feel? What do you want to do? So I sat down and analyzed both of them. And the English program was, a little bit of everything, a little bit of naval engineering, a little bit of structure engineering, a little bit of everything. I thought to myself, no, I didn't come all the way from Uganda to learn a little bit of everything. I really, really want to understand the whole transportation concept of Japan, its history, how they do these things and all. So I swallowed the bullet and I decided to do the Japanese program. So I did my master's in Japanese. So because I made that commitment in summer 2016, now I knew the road ahead would be bumpy. So the second semester, because we come in the first semester, so the second semester of that year, I decided to do further Japanese classes. I enrolled. They're free, really. So you just need to enroll. So I enrolled for them. I enrolled at a higher level. But also I used to attend seminars in my lab and started interacting with my lab mates. I had a whole, there was a lot of things I was doing so that I could prepare to study in Japanese. However, I would do my research was in English. My research was in English, which was really, really awesome. But the classes, 95% of my classes were in Japanese. So for those of you who are listening out there, depending on your university, depending on your professor, I went to Osaka University. So depending on where you are, it's possible that how they assess your graduate um, school is different. So in our case, would have like uh, group work, or you'd have individual work, or some professors would say, you'll just I just need attendance, perhaps, or they would say, write for me a report. So some of them would want reports in Japanese, some of them would want reports in English, some of them you just needed to attend, and then you'd have full marks. So the bit about English in this case, I would say it depends. It depends. Many of the top universities, Tokyo University, Osaka, Kyoto, all these Tokyo Institute of Technology, most of these universities have English programs and they also have Japanese programs. So it's up to you to decide on that. And then when you choose your path, you must commit to it. And just like Tugu said, some professors will say, okay, it's okay, we shall communicate in English, but there'll still be miscommunication, there'll still be misunderstanding somewhere, somehow, so you have to find a way to navigate all these things. Yeah.
Okay, okay, that's a very interesting perspective. So I think I like the fact that both of you came in through different routes and have somewhat similar experiences, and it's a good mix, and I guess the audience is enjoying the discussion. Uh, I know that we're getting close to the end of our time, so I'm going to invite the audience. If you have any questions, any particular questions, maybe general questions, or for any of the speakers, you can put it in the chat. We've also dropped LinkedIn handles on the chat, on the comment section, so you can, as usual, when we have speakers here, we always try to encourage people to reach out to the speakers on LinkedIn, connect. Maybe if you have particular questions you want to ask, you can, they can try to help you in their free time, but also be mindful that everyone's very busy. It may not be an immediate response, so you have to exercise some patience as well. We should be ending in the next 15 minutes at most. So this is the chance for you to come in with your questions. We have another session in a few hours. That will be evening for the GMT people, which is about research publishing and funding. So another interesting session to discuss. So people could also, you're also invited to join that one. That one's a little bit more about while you're doing the research, not about how to get into the program. And so it's just we're just trying to provide that body of information so everyone can really understand the way the process and everything works. And I feel that's very helpful and very useful. Usually we have general question and answer sessions on Sundays. So that there's no topic being discussed there. You can just come in with any question you have regarding scholarship, studies, postgraduate, undergraduates, whatever, and we will try to answer or take away your questions to professionals or speakers that mentors that we know that have the answers and bring them back. So at this point, since we are close to the end and I cannot see any questions in the chat, I would like to just ask the speakers to give general advice to the audience, people that are planning to apply for the scholarship, people that are currently applying for MEXT, people that are thinking of applying in Japan. What would you give them as, like, some general advice or final tips, or so should we start with you?
Sure. So it's one that is planning to apply or after they planned?
Planning to apply. Planning to apply.
Planning to apply. Well, I think I give always like this general advice for everyone, not just for graduate school, for everyone who's thinking of studying abroad, is that I think you need to also imagine first, like, what kind of lifestyle do you want to have in that country, right? Whether you're doing graduate or whether it's in English or Japanese or bachelor, I think have a little bit of like vision of how you want to pursue your lifestyle, like as well as that study. Are you planning to work in that country, or like all of that? Vision it a little bit, and it also, depending on how you vision it, it really does matter where you want to, like where in that country you want to go, right? Whether you like, it's so different to study in Tokyo. It's also really different. It would be different to if you study like really further away in the snow area, or because Japan is a fantastic country where we have like snow as well as like Hawaii like tropical place too. So that would be also a different experience if you do that. People would be there. It would be just so different from Tokyo people. So I think that is something I always give it as advice. Of course, it doesn't matter which university is good in your program and whether they have the English program that you want to go, but also like it's so important to kind of keen on that and choose the area that you want to go. I always say Tokyo can be one of the good experience, but if you don't like the big bustling city life, it's so hectic right here. So if you don't like that, if you're just not that type of person, try to avoid it, right? So there you can find another beautiful area that would suit you. But on the other hand, if you want to do a lot of like networking, and if you already want to work here, if you want to do a lot of internship, better come to Tokyo, because all the big opportunities are here too, right? Or all the big offices here too. So better to choose like big cities. Again, I'm saying only Tokyo, but Japan has also another like metropolitan cities like Osaka, Tokyo, pretty much same. No, Yokohama is pretty much same too. So that I would say as a general advice. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Just before we go over to Murungi, I think a question popped into the comment section, which I think we can take now. I'm more interested in the university recommended MEXT. I think that's the one you talked about, so that you were already got into the school, and then the school recommends you to the government. So she's asking, should one just apply to any Japanese university, or are there
No,
specific universities that have the MEXT?
no, that's the tricky part where you really need to find that program that they have. It has to be in English and university recommended mixed. You will see it on the title where like it's university recommended mixed English program. So it's not any university. So that's why the like opportunities will be really smaller, because also it's a graduate, right? It also need to suit for your research too. So
Oh, okay. So different universities have it on the title of the course that this is a university recommended MEXT course.
yes. I would suggest to just, of course, depending on your research, right? If it's engineering, look for engineering university recommended MEXT scholarship. So they would have that. And it's not any Japanese university, as I said. It has usually bigger and top university would have that program, not every Japanese university, because university has this confidence to tell, hey, Tukso can do this graduate, that she's accepted, but she need a scholarship. So that in that way they're recommending to the government.
Okay. Just a follow up. The participants asked for any recommendations in terms of schools. Personally, I think that would depend on your area of specialty or
Yeah, yeah,
research. But
yeah.
I don't know, maybe if you have a few schools you want to mention that you know do that. I don't know.
Right. It really depends on the field, but I do remember I do also like one-on-one sometimes PhD consultation or graduate, and also as well as bachelor, and it after doing that it felt like if you're in like economic and not non-engineer program, then there are more opportunities mostly in like private university too. So they would have that more. But then if you are in more engineering, it's usually those national universities. Just search on Google like national engineering schools. You can come up with maybe 20, 30, but the ones that they have English program maybe might come down to like 10. So yeah.
Okay. Okay. Thank you. Murungi, do you have anything to add to the question?
To the question, I think Tubus has said most of it, and yeah, the universities that have the MEXT recommended really are fewer than those that are open for MEXT, the bigger MEXT. So just like she said, you really just have to get in there and search. Probably you can just start by listing, say, the top maybe 30 universities in this area. Then those universities will come out, and then you have to go in the engineering website part, and then you look for the labs or the programs that have mixed or university recommended mix. So that one, it really has to be an individual endeavor. Alternatively, you could perhaps also ask your embassy people, people who work at the embassy of Japan in your country. That could be another resource. Or you can look up more people on LinkedIn. Some might have gone through that particular program. So, just slide into people's DMs and ask them. They might have a really an idea of for where for you, where you need to look, whom you need to ask. If they themselves can't do it, then probably they know someone who has, you know.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so it still comes back to, networking, research, talking to people. I think that's
Yeah.
a very important skill everyone needs to master because, you know, information comes when you know people that have the answers to the questions you're asking. And it's one of the reasons why we have these sessions, why we bring different speakers to come in. So, people can see different people, connect with different people, so that, when you want to ask a question about this, okay, you've seen this person on this session, maybe it's I can, even without talking to you, if I go to LinkedIn and I search for your profile, then I can see some of your
Mhm.
connections. Most of them might be in the field of what I'm looking for. So those are some of the
Yes.
things people can do on their own. Yeah. So just
Mhm.
before we close, like I asked Tuksu, do you have any general tips for prospective applicants, people looking to apply? Just final words at this point because we'll soon be done with the session.
Okay. So I think most importantly, you have to ask yourself why you want to do graduate school. Why do you want to do graduate school? Because the truth is, many of our countries, we don't really do a lot of research, and research is tough. Research is tough. You'll have sleepless nights. Some nights you'll cry. Some nights you'll wonder why the hell you're putting yourself through this. Sometimes will be really nice and interesting, and your research will be flying and you'll be feeling good, you know. But at the end of the day, you have to ask yourself, why do I want to do graduate school? When you have an answer to your why and perhaps a field that you want to engage in, then if you decide that okay, I want to do graduate school for these particular reasons, then you go out, it will be easier for you to even find universities because as much as there'll be like 30 coming out, you'll say, but this, and this speaks to my why, or speaks to something that I want to impact, or, in my case, as I said, I really wanted to learn. So I was looking for a place where I can learn, where I can absorb as much as I can. So for graduate school, you ask why you want to do it, then you go out and find a path. Then also with graduate school, and especially a place like Japan, it's very, very important to be open-minded, because the culture in Japan is none like any we are exposed to. At the beginning, you talked about their movies, their anime, and all these things, but sometimes the movies and the anime don't really portray what the society and the community you're living in really is. Sometimes I look at the animes and I'm like, but that is not really what I see in my society, kinda. So you have to be open-minded, when you decide to do your graduate school. And as Togo said, there's it's from Hokkaido to Okinawa, so you must again find where you want to go. Personally, I'm a person who's more. I want to be close to the city, but not so close that hustle and bustle is in my face. I want to be able to access it, but not so close. So that is why personally I chose Osaka University. Of course, first of all, the lab I wanted was there, but it's also a big city. But the big city that also helps that is also kind of quiet as compared to Tokyo. Then also I would encourage people to aspire for the top institutions. You know, most times they'll tell you, you can't get into those top universities, the competition is high, which is true. The competition is really, really stiff. Even Japanese sometimes, not sometimes, some Japanese cannot get into these top universities. They apply one time, two times, three times. It is tough. But I would like you to aspire, if it's something that you want, I'd like you to aspire for the big universities, for the big institutions, because the bigger the institutions, the more the opportunities, the more or networking you will have. And for example, it talks about do you want to work in Japan after that? When it's all said and done, you having a name of a certain university on your CV might even push you further. So you could also think about all those things. So aspire for a big university, aspire for a big institution. Of course, the stress might be more, because I have friends who said they opted for relatively smaller cities because they didn't want all the stress of being in a big university, top professors who will give you so much pressure. So once again, what is your why? Once you answer your why, then it's easier for you. But at the end of the day, I'd also like to encourage people to aspire, you know, for bigger things. And a lot of things are possible. There's a whole lot of possibilities out there. So be open minded, and whatever comes, know that someone else has gone through it, or someone else is going through it, and someone has probably come out on the other side, and you too can come out on the other side stronger, changed, all these things, perhaps a little bit broken here and there, but you come out really good. Yeah, you come out with a new version of yourself. So ask yourself why, be very open minded, and then be open to aspire for big
Yeah,
places.
yeah, I think those are very important points. I think usually whenever we have sessions like this, we always end up telling people that you need to know why you want to apply for a certain opportunity. I mean, whatever opportunity it is, whether it's school, whether it's business, whether it's at work, people just need to understand you shouldn't just do things because people are doing it or because you think it's you need to understand why you want to do it, because that helps you to kind of uh, limit or choose the right opportunities that fit you, and helps you to avoid frustration down the line as well, because it's a real thing, it happens.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think we've had a very wonderful discussion today, very interesting. Personally, I've learned a lot about the MEXT scholarship. So if I have people that ask me about it, I can be able to answer a few questions, which is very good. So thank you very much, both of you, for your insight and your explanations today, answering our questions. I believe the audience appreciates it as well. I want to also thank Fumi for also helping us with the sign language interpretation. It really helps us to reach a larger audience, try to be more inclusive and equitable with the sharing of information. And it's a very important thing. So Fumi is the founder of Friends of the Deaf International Foundation. You can look for them online, see what they're doing, see how you can collaborate with them if you think you want to. Yeah. So like I said, we have another session later today. So we've put the details of that in the chat. You can have a look at that. You can join us where we talk about research publishing, how to publish, what to look out for, tips on publishing, how to get funding for your research and stuff like that. So yeah, those are the things we'll be having at 6 p.m. GMT. So yeah, so we're trying to balance out the time zone, so people that may be sleepy by this time may have another session at the other time, but the recordings will always be on YouTube for you to watch. Thank our speakers most especially for the difference in time zone. I know it's late in the evening where you are now, and it's a weekend, you're supposed to be relaxing, so we appreciate your time so much, and we look forward to having you maybe sometime in the future. Always feel free to reach out to us, be with us, share your expertise. We really appreciate it. So I'll say goodbye to the audience on behalf of everyone, so that we can end. So yeah, so thank you everyone for joining. We'll
Yeah,
see
thank
you
you.
next
Mm,
time.
yeah.
Yeah, so I think that's it for today, or for now. Sorry,
All
for
right.
now, not for today. But so
Yeah.
yeah,
Thank
goodbye,
Thank you
and
too for,
yeah.
organizing such wonderful webinars for everyone. Thank you.
yeah,
Thank you
yeah,
very
you're
much.
welcome.
Sorry that I was a bit little late, but if you have any further specific questions, you can connect me on LinkedIn. And I need to leave the studio, so thank you, everyone. Thank you for me
Yeah,
again. You did a fantastic job as always. Yeah.
yeah.
Okay.
Bye. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for having me. Bye bye.
Bye.
Yay.